Hello, everybody, and thank you for watching the Positive Talk Hour on Soul Talk, on the Soul Talk Network. Today we have an amazing guest on all the way over in Spain, and he is quite an extraordinary healer, and I'm looking forward to talking about his method and his book today. I'm going to hold it up here. It is Discover Your Purpose, How to Use the 5 Life Purpose Profiles to Unlock Your Hidden Potential and Live the Life You Were Meant to Live. Rhys Thomas, how are you today?
Great, Jeremy.
Awesome. I'm excited to have you and talk about this subject. I think it's going to help a lot of people. And the book's actually been out, what, 2 months now?
Yes.
Okay.
We launched in August and got bestseller in Amazon bestseller. We didn't get New York Times bestseller, but we got bestseller in a couple of different areas, and we also got bestseller in Canada and Mexico and also in Germany. So we were pretty excited about that.
That's amazing. That's absolutely, completely amazing. You know, it's interesting because I'm actually, just to get a little off subject, I've been reading it and I've been looking because I've been a healer and a teacher and a speaker for a while, and I'm like, wow, I never really thought about it that way. And I'm even integrating some of the things and thinking, that's something to ponder and think about. So I know I'm going to reading the book like a couple times because I feel like it's one of those things where you probably pick it up after years and you're like, you know, and then you gain something more out of it each time you read it. I think the first question I want to ask you is, how did you? I know you said that this is something you've been doing over. You accumulated this from your clients over a 15-year period, if I'm understanding this correctly. So,
yeah, I mean, this work specifically around the energy work, I started into energy work, training in energy work 15 years ago.
Okay.
But basically, I've been doing this stuff since I was, your life purpose, and that's one of the things I do. Discover your purpose is not something that you. It's not something that you develop as a skill later on in life. It's something that you were born to be, and you've done it your whole life. You just never called it that. You didn't recognize it because nobody else recognized it, and you always thought, well, anybody can do that. That's not important. What's important are all these things that are incredibly difficult for me to do, and what I should be doing, and what people expect me to do. But these ideas, these concepts of this sort of this core element within us, that there are these very specific kinds of people that are in the world, and all, we're sort of, I always saw this in people. I always was able to see this in people, but it wasn't until I learned about the body's energy and the aura field and how the soul sort of and sort of our I trained for 25 years in the martial arts, and we worked on something called the Hara line, and we worked on this because that was this point within you that in the martial arts that you develop this strong energy, like almost like a column of light in the middle of you that can't be. Wayne Dyer talked about it in his things as the candle flame within you that can never flicker. And even though your body can get knocked down, there's this part of you, your purpose, who you are as an individual can never be knocked down. It can never have a problem. It has a mission that's unbendable and non-negotiable. And I always kind of knew that even when I was in my 20s, and I listened to Wayne Dyer and Tony Robbins and all these different speakers, and I listened to learned about quantum mechanics. But it wasn't until I got actually into a healer school, a 4-year healer training program, where they actually talked about how the mechanics of the energy works and how there are these different layers of consciousness within ourselves, rather than just sort of like, we're just people and we can do anything we want to do. I think the biggest lie we're taught is that we can do anything we want to do. The reality is that we can only do one thing, be us. And,
right.
and what does that mean? Well, there's definitely categories of people and qualities of people that we need to understand. And it wasn't until I had tried to be the wrong person for about 35 years and tried to be what I would call the knowledgeable achiever, and doing everything right and succeeding and driving and becoming a black belt in the martial arts and all these sort of driven kind of success type of things that I was doing, and running a business and speaking for the national tennis industry, and and doing all these things that I was thinking, well, now I'm, having a good family and home in the suburbs, all those things. And yet I always felt like there was something missing, and I could never figure it out because I was doing everything I was supposed to do. And I noticed that all my clients were the same way. And I was working with hundreds of people at the time in tennis. And also, as I started doing this energy work, I started working then with people in the energy work. And I started noticing everybody had the same thing. They kind of knew generally who they were, but they didn't have this sense of, this is who I am, and this is, and so they wake up every day thinking, this is my purpose. This is what I love doing. I can't wait to get started in my day. Right. So it wasn't until I got to that point in my late 30s where I just realized, which most people call the midlife crisis. I call it the midlife calling, but it's where you're getting called by the soul that's like, you forgot me, you left me behind, and there's that quality within you that has been there since the beginning that we then have to acknowledge if we're really going to live our purpose. And so that was sort of my journey. My journey was really absolutely being convinced that I was somebody that I wasn't. And if I had gone to one of my lectures, and I often say, how many of you know who you are? And there are people in the audience that raise their hand. They're like, I totally know who I am. You're not going to tell me anything new about me. And they are always, they're invariably the people that know nothing about who they are. They are absolutely convinced that they can behave a certain way, but they don't know who they truly are on the inside. The mind doesn't know who you are. It's sort of like each moment you're sort of expressed, and there's a core quality within us, which we talk about in Discovery of Purpose. Is the five kinds of people in the world, and that was sort of my how I sort of came to this. Was I was teaching people, I was seeing this in people, I was noticing, yes, there's certain types of people, when I was coaching in tennis for 25 years, there's certain people that are great doubles players. They just are great. They work as a team in a fantastic way. And they cannot win a match in singles. But then there's other people who can totally win matches in singles, but they play terrible doubles. Or they only win when it's sort of like the chips are down. It's like and they get to be a hero. And then there's so all kinds of different people that I was sort of coaching into how do you perform the best. And I noticed that one system never works for everybody, but there were a few systems that were so like, well, these people learn best this way, and these people learn best this way, and at the same time I studied some of the different types of profiling systems, the Enneagram and Myers-Briggs and DISC, and I noticed, there's ways to sort of figure out who people are, and I thought, well, that's great, we'll figure them out. But as I've learned this system and developed this system that's based on the body's energy field and on the soul energy, I'm noticing that those other systems were really based on behavior. And the problem is that I looked at my life and I said, if I looked at my behavior, I would be absolutely convinced that I'm an achiever. I'm a knowledgeable achiever because that's how I tried to behave. I thought all men are supposed to be knowledgeable achievers, and that's what I should do. And so then, and later on, I was realizing, oh my God, so it's not about what you've done, it's about who's hiding on the inside. And so this book's about really revealing and helping people wake up to that person that they've been waiting or that's for hiding, but that they can't wait to get out and share with the world because it's the only thing that'll make them happy.
It's interesting. One of the things I've gained from even talking to you just now, but reading through the book is I've just actually gone through this change in my own life, and I've been kind of smiling about it. And one of the things I've been smiling about is that I've been a corporate trainer for over 20 years, and I've been trying to over the last 8 or 9 years get away from that and just be like a Tony Robbins or or somebody like you, or I wrote a book and all this other kind of stuff. And I still like writing my books, and I still like doing my shows, but I will put my book writing on hold and procrastinate on it. But when I'm at work this week, I just designed an entire diversity program, and I did it within 4 or 5 days, and I was inspired, and I had all these things, and I was excited, and the day just flies by, and I thought to myself, why am I fighting so hard on getting away from something that I truly, truly enjoy?
Yeah.
And this company brings all of my students to me. I don't have to go out there because in Myers-Briggs, interesting enough, I am an ENFJ, but I'm just barely an E. I'm actually more introverted than most people would think. And I don't know. And so as I was reading this, I was thinking, I'm really kind of going against my purpose here. I'm really good at this corporate training thing, and there's a reason. I've been doing it for 20 years. And so it just kind of makes you stop and ponder and think, am I being truly authentic? And maybe this is not the time, or maybe this will change. I don't know. It was just something I was pondering. So
Yeah, well, and that's one of I think that's one of the struggles with people is they do the corporate work until they're in their 30s, 40s, and maybe in their 50s because it pays well and it does well, but in the back of their mind, they learn or they get involved and so they realize they have to find something deeper within themselves. And then they come into the community of more spiritual people that are like, oh, well, corporate is bad for you. Corporate's, and there's no question that there are elements of the corporate environment that are very unhealthy for people spiritually because they really need to hide who they are and just perform. But the truth is that if you're willing to be who you are, you can bring that to any situation.
That's kind of, yeah.
And if you're, and what I mean, when I was a tennis pro, and I sort of Americans think about being a tennis pro as kind of like a job you do until you get a real job, and yet my dad had been a career tennis pro, and then I met other people, and when I met Australians, I hired a bunch of Australians over the years. And in Australia, being a tennis pro is that's like a high honorary job because they consider being a teacher to actually being a very important job. In our culture, unless you're on Wall Street or running a big corporation, or a doctor or a lawyer or something, you're just not important. And teachers are really looked at as low. And so I never looked at being a teacher as being actually a purpose. It was just something that you could do and anybody could do that, but anybody can't do that. And so part of what you're describing there is you've also got one of the things we do at the Rhys Thomas Institute. I have a 3-year energy medicine training program, and starting in the second year, we really get into the archetypal elements of your profile. And one of them would be teacher, and the teacher just likes to teach. And so when you're doing your shows here, you're doing education, but you're teaching while you're doing this. You're sharing this love of connecting and sharing a message with people and inspiring them to deeper thought. Yep. So when you're, and I looked at my teaching at the club, and I was thinking, boy, when I get a corporate job, when I really sell my first book or my biggest product, and I created an amazing product that was actually a high-tech computer analyzing of your motion, because I figured out that basically coordinated people are very quiet in the upper body and move a lot in the lower body. It was like, okay, well, that should be easy. We just put something on a person's head that tells them anytime they tilt, because when you tilt, what happens is that you lose your perspective, your world. And you look at the great athletes, the great soccer players, basketball players, their head doesn't move at all. So I developed this whole thing, and I started a corporation and did this, but I don't have a chakra for that. I don't have that drive, that type of thing. And so what I did love doing, that was like pulling teeth, trying to get that business off the ground and going to these sales meetings and doing all these and starting a company and selling stocks, and it was just so crazy. And I was like, I can't do that sort of stuff. I loved going on the tennis court and teaching, or standing up in front of a group and teaching. And then it wasn't until I realized who I really am, which is I'm not this knowledgeable achiever, even though I have some of it. I'm what's called a creative idealist. I'm a person who loves the creative moment. Like right now, we get on here and you do too. You said we're just gonna have like a conversation here. I'm like, great, because that's the way I live my life.
Absolutely.
And I'd much rather do that than have this set. I'm sure you've had a lot of professional speakers on here and book writers, and they say the exact same thing every time they go on a radio, because it's the right thing to say and everybody gets it. And I'm like, no, but I don't want them to get some theory. I want them to get me. I was like, this is, I don't want to share something that's not the truth. And so when you're teaching, you're most in your core.
Yep.
And so it wouldn't really it really doesn't matter what you're teaching. So you happen to find that you're good at corporate, and then the second thing is well, you're good with systems. So maybe you pull those systems together. But that sort of brings in that teacher model, which then also asks, which of the profiles do you think you are?
I was looking through that. I actually was looking at the one and thinking I was leaning towards the emotional intelligence specialist. And probably, I don't know if you can be more than one or have a creative idealist and thinker. Would probably be that one as well. I do love being in my space, pondering, thinking, creating stuff, and then once it's created, like to see it unfold before my eyes. And I tend to be love organic things. I did a festival called Celebrating Infinite Oneness a couple years ago. And the idea, I didn't put a schedule. I didn't hand out an agenda. You know how you always get pamphlets or brochures when you walk in. It says, this speaker speaking at this time. And basically, I just stood up in the front of them and said, there is no agenda. I mean, we have a basic outline of what things are going to be, but if you happen to be over here at a vendor's booth or over here listening to music or getting a healing over here, that's where Spirit wanted you to be. And so you don't have to worry about being wherever. You're at the right and perfect place at the right and perfect time at all times. And so it was very interesting, the lessons that everybody had to go through today. It was about 80 people there that came. And even I had a guy playing crystal bowls in the Tibetan singing bowls. Nice. He went over on a set. He had a 30-minute set. He didn't go over by 5 minutes. He went over by an hour. So my friend Jim Talbot walked in and said, Jared, don't worry about it. And Jim comes in with 100 djembe drums. And so everybody grabs one and they do. And so he starts playing his drums to pull them from one stage to the next. Nice. So it was a lesson in flow. So yeah, it's interesting because when we think about our purpose, we get really caught up. And then you even bring in, so you're talking about if it's causing you good feelings, you talk about this in the book, then go towards that. Often we're in resistance to that. And I'm sitting here thinking, how often are we in resistance to something that makes us so happy? And it's because, and you even talk about this because of our vows. Our vows, we say, I vow not to do this. I vow that because we've been hurt, and we got some kind of circumstance. We saw our father do it over, our mother do it, and we don't want to see that. And it was really a lot of information.
Well, and one of the things that there are a couple of things in the book that I truly am hoping to leave as sort of a legacy, and one of them are the vows, and for therapists to understand the vows rather than the wounding. Therapists understand wounding; they don't understand the vow. Nobody died of. I guess lots of people die of wounds, but nobody died of a crushed heart or ego or anything like that. But what happens is that what you vow, what you decide to think about the event that happened to you after the event, or how you reacted to that as a child, how you had to survive with that. And a lot of people say, well, this wound happened, you were abused like this, or you were abandoned, or you were this, and that's what triggered, and it's because of that you are, or where you are, what's going on. And the truth is that when you understand what the profile system, who you are is not a matter of nurture. It's not a matter of what's happened to you in your life. You came in complete. All of us came into the world totally non-formed. We were not boys or girls. We are not going to wear blue or pink. We are not going to, play soccer or do this or be, whatever it is that our culture was going to teach us and condition us and domesticate us, as Don Miguel Ruiz would talk about in the Four Agreements. We're domesticated into believing a lie about who we are. When we were like up till about 2 years old, we literally, aren't even noticing the difference between us and other people. There's sort of like you said, there's this oneness, there's this time. We're not thinking, oh God, what time is it? Geez, am I getting my bottle now? What's we're not doing any of that stuff. It's just like life just exists, and we're this non-form until our parents go, hey, no, look at me, mommy, Rhys, you're a Rhys, and you're a boy, and this is this is our house, and it's like all of a sudden everything has to be structure, where we're really non-structure. Right. And our non-structure has a feeling to it. It has this, and it comes in and it has this sort of like strong quality of what we call charismatic leader, or it has this sort of like, they see the big picture. Kids are just like, they just kind of are aware, much more aware. They're the knowledgeable achievers. They're aware and they pick things up quickly. They learn language quickly. They potty train quickly. They get things. They pick things up. And then there's the ones who are just sort of like loving and helpful and want to hug and are always there to help out and smiling, and we call them the team players. And then there's the emotional intelligence specialists who can be very, very needy, but they're also gentle and soft and want to be held and nurtured, and they literally just love. They just are children that you just see them and they're just made of love. They're just like non-form. They're just this big love. And then there are the thinkers who, they're not even paying attention. They're not even in there. They're somewhere. They literally, in those first few years of life, they spend more time playing with their imaginary friends, which aren't imaginary friends. It's like their guides and their friend. They're out of their body completely, and they're just having this world. But it isn't until they have to make the choice, and the real wound is the vow. And it's not a vow against never getting hurt again or never. It's a vow that you have to make, which is the impossible choice that every child makes, which is between being who they are, which is this non-form that just has a feeling and knows exactly how to respond to the world because it's what I am, and the world is meeting me at what I am, or being what I'm supposed to be and getting along and speaking English for me, or for any other language, speaking Spanish here in Spain. But it's learning the rules of life and choosing that and vowing to hide this part of us that doesn't go along with the plan. And that vow is the core wound in all of us. And how we do that in our household with our family, you can have the greatest parents in the world, but they will still expect you to behave like a human, like what they call a person, a boy or a girl, and there are rules around that. And then what's crazy is that the next level of that sort of craziness is we start trying to be who we're supposed to be more than who we actually are. And over time, we eventually become who we're supposed to be. And in our mind, we're really convinced this is who we are. Like I said, I spent 35 years trying to be what I call a knowledgeable achiever, because all men should be good knowledgeable achievers. I was getting a black belt in martial arts. I was running businesses. I was making big six figures. I was doing good things in the world, and I was a good spouse and a loyal husband and a good father, and I was doing all these things, but I wasn't being genuine. And when you're not being genuine, things don't work that well. I felt like people didn't understand me at work. And I love the fact that you ran this whole big event and you had no schedule for it. Well, I'm working at a country club where everybody I'm working for are all knowledgeable achievers, charismatic leaders. They're all these sort of like rigid control people. And I'm giving them a budget that's sort of like, they're like, give us your budget. Now we give them this big budget, and it was totally creative. And they were like, we don't want a creative budget. We want the budget. And I'm like, what do you mean? This is the budget. This is the plan. This is how it's working, but this is where we're going, and this is what's going to happen. And they're like, no, we want the budget. And so I sort of, I wasn't understood there. I didn't feel like I was understood with my spouse. I didn't feel like I was understood. My children didn't understand me. I wasn't able to communicate with them because I was lying to everybody I knew. It's not that being a good person is a bad thing. It doesn't hurt anybody on the outside, but it hurts everybody on the inside. Because if I'm telling you that I'm this knowledgeable achiever that has it all together, and I write books, and I'm successful at this, and I do, and you buy that story, you're going to then lie to me about who you are, because I'm more perfect than I appear to be. And so you can't, when a person's in what's called defense, when you're trying to be somebody that you aren't, or living in a profile that you don't live in, or isn't your core, everybody who you tell the story about who you are and buys it will also not really trust you. At some basic level, they won't trust you, and at some basic level, they're going to lie back. And so you can't have genuine relationships, no intimacy, no real closeness. There's just behavior. And that's why, I talk about this system that I have, that I've developed, is really core-based, It's based on how the body's energy system works. That's why I teach an energy medicine school, because if you don't understand how the energy works, how the chakras work, how that works, you don't really understand the law of attraction. The chakras are the law of attraction. And they've only ever attracted to you what your life purpose is. You've never had anything come to you. They're literally just magnets for your life purpose. The problem is that they magnetize exactly what you need to either wake up, become stronger, or be called to your life purpose, or no, that's not my life purpose. And what happens is that you don't know who you are, so you can't recognize it. And you say, well, I don't want that crap. I don't want any of this. Then why are these people always coming to me? Why does this keep coming? So like for me, I started teaching, and you probably did too, in some way, shape, or form, creatively teaching at as early as, probably early with my friends. But then I actually started teaching tennis when I was 13 or 14, and I get up early in the morning before school, and I go out, and my very first lesson was a doctor and his wife that wanted to get a lesson at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, and my dad was a tennis pro, so he just said, look, I don't want to teach this thing. If you want to teach a tennis lesson, here's one for you. And I started teaching, and from then on, I just loved to teach. But because society told me that teaching isn't really a job and you can never make money at it, I never looked at it as anything of value. Now I realize that it's who I am, and it doesn't matter what I teach. And I might as well, and since I also love this deep sort of sense of soul, I want to teach about the soul, and that's my mission. But it really wouldn't matter, if you're a teacher, whatever you love to teach, whatever you love to teach people about, and you may have much more of the scientific kind of mind than I have, where you can actually teach people processes in a way that corporate really needs that. They really need you to be able to do that.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because I've actually brought in not only that, I actually bring in this type of stuff. I think last weekend when I talked earlier on video, I actually said I might start bringing these in the corporate classes, the discover your purpose, or some of those principles, because you can teach these principles. Instead of saying meditation, we say mindfulness, and we say focusing the mind and stuff like that. And it's funny you should talk about, because you were talking about how you thought that the teacher doesn't make a lot of money, or the mind process is a story that was running in your mind. Right. And I did that many, many times, where I would leave the training world and I would go into operations, and I become a manager, and I became a vice president, and all that other kind of stuff. I remember sitting in my office thinking, I'm really miserable. and so I made good money, and it wasn't about the money, and I realized something. I keep on doing that. This is probably about 32. I was sitting there going, this isn't working for me. And of course, then you take this journey of discovery when you make that I call it a milestone, where you finally make a decision to be authentic.
Yeah.
And of course, authentic is like you said earlier, a layer of consciousness. You keep on going through these layers, through the energy field of all these lies that you buried into yourself, or these stories. And I think you talk. What I find interesting too is that you talk about don't throw away your vows, come into balance with them. Basically, I think what you're saying is that you're incorporating, because you give the duality in each one of these statements. This is who you are. This is the statement. This is the higher consciousness, lower consciousness. And you're saying find the middle, if I'm understanding you correctly. And,
well, I'm saying even more than that. I'm saying we tend to find the middle. We have this lower self, like every, I use Martin Luther King's a perfect example. I think I use him in the book, but it's also, he became one of the most altruistic people ever to live, right? He literally sacrificed himself for this amazing cause of integrity within humanity. And he's not the only one that's done that, but there was this self sort of like putting his own life on the line to live his purpose and mission, which is an incredibly altruistic and martyr. It's a bit of a martyr, but there was this altruistic quality. To own that level of altruism, you have to have a massive narcissist inside you. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately he has to know. See, if you don't have a really strong narcissist, he wouldn't have known that he was the only one that could do this. Mm-hmm. And a couple years ago, I was listening to WBUR, which is our public radio station in Boston, and there was a gentleman on who was Martin Luther King's sort of right-hand man. He was an older guy, and he was talking about all the things, and he said, you know, a lot of people don't know that that Martin Luther King, about 6 months before the march, left the country, and he wasn't coming back. And he actually went to the same ashram that Gandhi had gone to before he did his march, and soul searched to decide if he wanted to come back, because he knew that it was likely that he was going to get killed, and he wasn't sure he was up for it. And so, and when he was there, he decided that he had to come back because he was the one that had to do it. And if he didn't have the sense of there's only one that can do what I need to do in the world, which is me, if he didn't have that narcissism, that individual sort of like, I'm the one that has to do this, he couldn't have actually been the one that was so altruistic and so self-sacrificing and so for all, that, you know, and have that energy. And so this deeper understanding that these shadow qualities and light qualities within us are to be embraced fully. And so even if you're totally in your light quality and you're totally altruistic, simultaneously you're narcissistically getting incredible, you know, sort of enjoyment from being the one. From being the one who's doing it. And you can't separate the two. We tend to try to, because we say, well, I never want to be narcissistic. And so we kind of lop that, you know, here's our expanse of our possibility, with just in this one area, which would be narcissism and altruism. And we say, well, I'll never want to be narcissistic up to this point. I mean, everybody needs to get what they need to get in the world, but beyond that, and getting it more than other people, and being, you know, sort of controlling and manipulative and lying about things, you know, the narcissistic type of thing, I'll never do that. But the problem is that you can't then keep that same level of height as well. You literally have to lop that off as well. And so when you said we all end up getting somewhere in the middle, that's where everybody tries to live. We actually we're not even conscious how narcissistic we are or how altruistic we can be. We tend to just know we're safe in our safe zone here in the middle. And so this book's really about recognizing that we have qualities within us that are deep and powerful and don't need to be acted out on, but they actually have our real raw desire. Because when we talk about chakras, the lower three chakras are like animals. You know, they're like the lizard. They're totally about us in this moment, in this body, surviving and getting what we need as an individual, and everybody else be damned. And everybody has those three lower chakras. And we all have the three upper chakras, 5, 6, and 7, that are all based on connecting with infinite possibility and how everybody and seeing this big picture where everybody works together. And of course, how could all of humanity not be one thing, you know? And we understand that at a deeper level, that we're here to unify people, whereas at our lower chakra level, we literally just want to have it our own way. And so sitting between the higher self, this realizing that we're all one, and the lower self, which is, I need to get what I need to get right now, thank you, is our heart, which is really the adult aspect within us, which then integrates this reality that, yes, we live in a human body and we need to survive on planet Earth, and we need to honor some of these deeper drives and purposes that we have, and desires that we have. But at the same time, we can use that energy of desire and wanting that the lower chakras have, and use that to feed and fuel the energy of unifying. And so we have to find out who we are to know how that's going to work. And so we all have this lower self-drive, and we all have this higher self need to come together. But the heart's the one that says, it's the self-reflective consciousness where we look back in and say, oh, this is who I really am. This is what I really want. I don't just want to have my way and make $1 million. I want to connect at a really huge level in the world, because that's the chakras I have in the lower self. And I want to make sure that everybody gets this. In the meantime, I'll make $1 million because I'll be helping people at this high level. Or you find out that you have a lower chakras that are just want to be held and loved. And it's like, and all they want to do in the higher sense is connect with people one-on-one and in a more intimate type of way. And so knowing how to honor yourself and self-love is to recognize that we have both shadow and light, and we have this, the key is to know which quality you have. Are you a creative idealist, what we call a creative idealist, where you're, as we were talking about, sort of like the flow of consciousness and really getting the upper chakras, really living and being able to live up there and be happy there? Or are you this sort of deeper, what you had talked about, you felt like you have this deep emotional intelligence within you as well, and the softness, and sort of the heart and the gentleness in there, which I totally see in you as well. And those, by the way, the creative idealist and the emotional intelligence specialist, when they get together, those are the two combinations that get together when the person's a saint. So you got the saint archetype. And then there's people that are just warm and friendly, and we call them the team players. They're the ones who are your best friend. They call you all the time, and when you're sick, they help you out. So we've got these different types of people, and you can tell that they're very different people. The super creative, artistic, and scientific type of people are totally different than the ones that are soft and just want to talk and have tea with you. They're totally different, and they're very different than these big, strong, team players that are there for you and they have your back and they're going to help you and they're going to change your tire for you if they need to. They're going to be there. They're going to carry you when you need to be helped. They're going to come and they're going to always help you when you're sick, or they're going to go out of their way to help, or they always at work. They're the ones who stay late and and get the work done, and they really care about the business, about the people. And then there's this what are called knowledgeable achievers, and they're the ones that always seem to have it together. Hair is always perfect. They dress just right. The tie is perfect. Their houses, the colors all match. The furniture matches. It's usually very clean. They got straight A's through school, and they're driven sort of for internal perfection. And they're leaders in the world. They become very good in corporate, because corporate has a structure. Anything that has to do with structure, they can master that. And so ultimately, when they're in their core, they're actually they're the sages in the world. They're the ones who can really, you go to them and they sort of see the big picture for everybody, and they can, and rather than just being sort of rule keepery and controlling and structure wise, they have this much broader understanding of how everything works in the world. And they're very brilliant when it comes to building systems, and they're ultimately the ones that are going to need to build the systems in our cultures to make things work, rather than just feed the corporate maw. Mm-hmm. And then the final one is the charismatic leader, which are the most dynamic and the most hard to pin down, because they tend to be actors and actresses and politicians, and whether they're actually a politician or whether they're just a politician in the family, whether they're the one that's sort of like, they're in charge because they seduce and they cajole, or they use force, and they're the fighters, they're the warriors, they're all the army people. They're the ones who are the biggest energy. They're also the ones that are the most likely to go to jail. They're the most likely to, because when you have this huge energy, it's going to go somewhere. And one thing you can say about a charismatic leader is that they are they're either a fantastic example or a terrible warning, and there's no in between. And sometimes they go from being a fantastic example and running an amazing business, and then they self-sabotage, or they drink, or they become alcoholics or drug addicts or whatever, and they totally sabotage. And then boom, 4 years later they're back, and they're back on top again, and they tend to have these cyclical 3 or 4 year cycles in their lives where they're on top and then they sabotage, and they're on top and they sabotage. And but they are the people that you want to most be around, because they have this fantastic energy and charisma. And they can be very seductive, but they can also be incredibly manipulative, and because they're actors and actresses, you can never tell if they're the person that they say they are. And often they forget who they are too, because they've been playing a role for so long. They're like method actors, and after a while they become this role. And it's when they do this work that they realize that they may be playing the role of a great team player, and they think they're a team player. They play the role of an emotional intelligence specialist because I'm so soft and so this. But the truth is that if you've ever torn someone off, you're not an emotional intelligence specialist. If you've ever gotten crazy angry and punched somebody out or anything, you're not an emotional intelligence specialist. It's not there. It would have to come from a different profile. So understanding that there's these 5 kinds of people, and you really understanding that they're like different species, and you can't. And one of those 5, we all have all 5 within us. Everybody, leads at times, achieves at times, caretakes others at times, is heart-centered at times, and has a creative side, at times. But one of those is why we're here. One of those is why we're here we talked about the upper chakra concept. They're here on the planet to unify people through that profile. Mm-hmm. And so for me, to think that I was going to use my creativity to be a good knowledgeable achiever and create products and run businesses that specifically made good money and hired people and did this, that was, even though I have some knowledgeable achiever in me, and you have to have knowledgeable achiever in you too to be able to do some of these things, it was like a secondary or a third quality within me that I was trying to run it through because that's who I thought I was supposed to be.
Right.
It wasn't until I realized that I'm this creative idealist that I have always had the things that were actually the most important to me in my life were these crazy dreams I had. I had these incredible dreams that were just so like otherworldly that I never told anybody about. And I thought, nobody wants to hear that crap. And I would sort of see people's energy, and I'd say, this is this person's soul. This person has like a soul quality. It's like this. And I was thinking, nobody wants to hear that crap. And then I find out later on that nobody wanted to hear the crap I was trying to dish them about these businesses that I was running. They wanted to hear all about these crazy thoughts I had. And they I'm like, oh my God, I spent my whole life trying to hide this quality within me. It was just so natural, so easy. And that's the crazy thing about our life purpose. It's the easiest thing we've ever done because it doesn't feel like anything. It's just being us. And when we're who we are, our most important life purpose is to inspire other people to also be their life purpose, their core self. And the only way we can do that is to discover who we are and to share that. And through that exuberance and through that enjoyment of who we are, we remind other people that it's okay not to be who they're supposed to be and what culture and society and mom and dad and their spouse and their bosses are telling them they should be, but that it's really okay to be who I really am. And to help all of those other people that are demanding that you be somebody that you aren't, remember who they are as well. And when each person is doing that in the world, we won't have wars anymore because people in their core don't go into battle. Even warriors, even if you're a warrior by nature, you don't go into battle until you're in defense. You would stand for things. You would fight for unity rather than separation, rather than the border, rather than keep them out of the country. You don't fight for things unless you're in defense. And when we learn this, the basic, I'm hoping that my book is kind of like the 100th monkey. We need something to remind us that we missed one piece of this whole thing. We've got the spirituality. We have this infinite amount of new healing modalities and techniques that we can be using now in our lives. And we know how to release blocks, and we know how to change our energy field and change the way we think and change our body chemistry and all these sort of things. But once we've done that, what are we going to do it for if we don't know who we are? If we don't know why we're here, the big why, we can do all the energy work in the world, and that's what I'd been doing. But I kept saying, oh, I'm going to do all this energy work so I can be a better knowledgeable achiever, which I thought I was. But the truth was, I wasn't that. It wasn't until I figured out who I actually was that then everything I do now, all the energy work that I do, all the changes in my life I make toward enhancing that quality and letting myself express that more and more, which then, of course, motivates other people, inspires them as well.
It's amazing. Something that you were talking about, I was visualizing the energy system, and I'm thinking about the lower chakras and the upper chakras, and it's something I've been teaching over the last couple of years. I've been saying, just live life and allow it to flow through you. And right. You may go over here and realize that didn't work so well, and you may go over here, but it's really not about working so well. That experience brought you back to the whole, and it's like you were talking about. You have to be, there's the narcissist in certain people, and then there's the opposites. There's the higher consciousness, but we want to avoid the narcissist part of us.
Right.
And if I want to be truthful about and being a teacher, I get a sense of satisfaction standing in front of them and motivating them, seeing them light up, and then they all say, "Oh, you're such a great teacher," and all that other kind of stuff. And to say that I don't enjoy that would be lying to myself, and because I do. And so it's interesting how many people are out there that are living this life and they're denying the parts that feel good. They may be doing something close to what their life purpose is, but they're denying the part that they enjoy the most about it. And they're saying, oh, I have to, no, I don't know. They may love their partner completely, but when their partner says, I love you, you're absolutely beautiful, they're like, oh, don't give me a compliment.
Right.
But they love that their partner does that. So,
of course.
And so
it's no, it's amazing. We talk about, we look at religions, and you look at, and of course, if you're a priest, you're supposed to be completely altruistic and above everything. And religion attracts, and people it attracts a very first chakra. Religions are very first chakra. It's a power position. It's, when you're above, sort of, and you're living in this place of I'm above normal human conditions and things. It's like that's a total lie. That's the narcissist living actually as a priest. When you are a priest by nature, when you have that archetype, when you are, when like you said, we have the creative idealist and the emotional intelligence specialist that the greatest saints were, it's because you can't help yourself. You're so connected to spirit that it's been just downloading and will not ever stop downloading, and you simultaneously care deeply about people. That's when you ought to be in the church. Not because you're really good and you can follow the rules and you can work your way up and become a cardinal or something at some point in the world, and gain some level of power. It's not about, the power is the individual person discovering their own purpose. And there are plenty of people in the world that are born to be priests and are born to be, really guide us spiritually. Sadly, it's not always the ones that get the job. Because often it's the ones that follow the rules that get the jobs. And the ones that follow the rules are doing it more from, this is a good thing for me personally, and yet they and you get the New Agers too. They're like, oh, bless you, my child, and it's just like, oh my God, that's like they're what they're really saying when they say I forgive you is really saying, it's because you're so much stupider than I am that I have to forgive you. And I'm so much better than you are that I can bless you. It's like that's not a blessing, that's a curse. And so it isn't. It's just really about sort of understanding that we have this huge continuum of who we are. And when we're genuine, when you really meet a genuine a guru, and we had we've had many gurus in the United States that have become incredibly famous, and then they have these horrible sex scandals, and they have these horrible sort of things behind them, and it's because they never owned that they were actually only doing the guru from their narcissist. They had incredible talent. Yes, right. They could meditate and they could put you in this altered state, and they could totally do, but they were doing it just from the shadow of their charismatic leader. They were natural charismatic leaders, but they hid the fact that they were having sex with their people and those sort of things, rather than embracing the fact that when you read about yourself in my book, you're going to read about these amazing qualities that you have, that you may be embarrassed to have such amazing qualities. It's like when you really read about, if you read about the emotional intelligence specialist, or you read about, for you, the creative idealist, and you really think, God, am I really an Einstein? Am I really, a Steve Jobs? Am I really like that? Do I really have a great example of a fantastic sort of creative idealist and emotional intelligence specialist is Pope Francis right now. The guy really, even within the system that he's in, is so loving and so genuinely emotionally connected. And so it's like, so you're born for it. How he ever got the job, I don't know, as Pope, but he's totally changing the format of what a spiritual person needs to do within the church, and really is a leader in that as well, by not being afraid to be who he is, by not trying to conform to what everybody expects him to do. And so each of us have these incredibly high qualities within us, but then we also have to acknowledge that we have these other desires, and we can all know what they're like, because anytime we don't fulfill one of our desires, that's where addiction comes from. So our energy field, we were born to have a full energy field. when we don't have a full energy field of who we are, we try to fill it with things that aren't who we are. And that's what an addiction is. So it's like, it's either control or a drug or sexuality or something that we use to fulfill the thing that we're not allowed to have within us. And so when you look at it, people look at addiction as sort of, as something you have to control, and it's not, you don't need to control it. You just have to figure out what you vowed to not be in yourself. When I vow not to be angry, I end up being surrounded by and angry at and judgmental of anybody in the world who's angry. And my addiction is to judge angry people. Mm-hmm. And yet I always feel above it. And so I have this terrible addiction of seeing anybody who has anger and seeing, well, that person's a lesser person because I vowed not to be angry. I mean, it's a very simple example. And yet, and I was a person that always learned that smiling works. It's like the best thing you can do. But sometimes you got to be angry. And because in the East, they teach that anger is the most important emotion, because anger is what happens, like with a child. Children don't get angry until you restrict them.
Yeah.
But as soon as you restrict a child and they want to get out, they start going, ah, ah, and they get angry. Yeah. And then we do the worst thing we possibly do to them. We hold them down, and we may be holding them back from running out in the street to get run over by a car, but they don't know that. But when they get angry and then they hit you because they're angry and they're trying to create freedom for themselves, we say, you will never do that again. We do not hit each other. We do not get angry. That's bad. And because we have this illusion that anger is actually rage. Rage is unconscious aggression. Anger is actually the heat within us that reminds us that we're stuck. Mm-hmm. And when we vow not to have anger within us, for instance, we don't know how to get unstuck. And we have a culture of people, and I mean, I don't know anybody that comes to me. I've got 125 students a year that come to me, and we run them through the school and the 3 years in the program, and every one of them is stuck in some way, and a lot of it is that they don't allow themselves to be angry about their situation because it's inappropriate. Or they vow to always be angry, and they're just angry about everything, and they can't focus their anger to actually release and realize, I'm the one who's holding me down tight. I'm the one, and I need to be angry about the way I treat myself, the way I think, my thought process, and the way I see myself as somebody that I'm not is actually keeping me stuck in my life. And so whether it's a relationship, whether it's your career, or whether it's your health, which are the three big things that people come to me to fix, you need these lower self-emotions to actually do what they do best, which is move energy, make change in the world, make change in your life. And so anger is just a perfect example of how people vow not to have something, and then it creates horrible addictive behavior to never having that as a problem. So really what the book's about is really, it's once you see yourself in there, and by the way, there's as you saw that there's a profile assessment in there. There's a mini profile assessment, so you can take that and figure out who you are. And then there's sort of the understanding of how vows work and that stuff. But then when you figure out who you are and you start reading about the profile, these chapters are really designed to give people permission to be all of who they are, rather than just who they're supposed to be, just the better side of it. Because everybody would like to be the creative idealist like Einstein, but you don't understand that the creative idealist, Einstein, was also probably tormented in his life because he can't learn the way other people learn.
Right.
I have this super creative idealist, and I was dyslexic, and I never could learn the way other people learn, and I couldn't, and so it's part of this. It's part of this. I feel so fortunate now that I couldn't learn the way everybody else learned, because I would have learned all the dumb rules about living, and I never could figure them out. So I always thought I was dumb, and then later on I found out, oh no, this is genius. This is what my genius is. My genius is bringing in ideas that are new rather than reconstituting old ideas.
That's interesting because I think they actually think that they know that Einstein had a learning disability, what they deemed a learning disability, and of course
Yeah.
I was diagnosed with dyslexia in 1979 when I was 5, and
Yep.
and so and it took me until I was in my 20s to realize I wasn't stupid. I was I just see the world as differently, and it's hard for people to say that. But you actually said something interesting. We were talking about anger, and we have to embrace that anger. And I think when we don't embrace it, then it becomes an uncontrollable rage, because it
Right.
builds up and builds up and builds up. And I think it's Debbie Ford that said in one of her books, she said, "Isn't there a time when it is necessary to be a bitch?" And because somebody says to her in a workshop, she says, "Debbie, you're a bitch." And she says, "Well," and she goes, "No, she goes, "I know that. How do you know that?" and and she's like, and there are times, she's like, what if you're building a house and it's over budget and all that other kind of stuff? And wouldn't that be a time to allow that part of yourself to come out and stand up for yourself? And
Right.
and so of course, because she says this word, and in this video, everybody cringes and said, I can't believe she just said that word. And it's just a word.
Right. It's
And
just a word, but it actually, for certain profiles,
mhm.
and for Debbie, since she had the strong charismatic leader, the bitch is like, that's like a big one you got to own.
Yeah.
You got to really own the narcissist. You have to own the bitch. You have to own, the liar. You have to own all those things so that you can then be the one who tells. In the book, I give the examples of for each of the profiles. There are certain lower self traits that were just like, I would never want to be that. And would never want to do, be any of those things. But without having that, you can't have the higher side. So for instance, the liar for the charismatic leader is when you're a liar, when you have the ability to lie, you also have the ability to speak a sort of a non-conventional truth. You're willing to say something that nobody else has said before. Who was it? The inconvenient truth. That we ran for president.
Oh well, make me think.
Anyway, but the inconvenient truth, the charismatic leader is, whereas they can lie and control you with gossip and lies and all that, they can also be so truthful, so direct with what they say that it totally takes you back and says, oh my God, yeah, who else would have said that? It takes a person who's willing to die for their cause to be able to say something. The inconvenient truth was what Martin Luther King was talking about. He was saying there's a very inconvenient truth. Now, Martin Luther King had this horrible shadow side. They were saying that he was probably bipolar, and he had issues with all sorts of sexuality and things. And he was not this man sitting in a white robe, but he knew his purpose in life. He knew that battle within him had to be fought for this inconvenient truth that we cannot keep going on on this insane roller coaster that we were on, where so many people were being repressed, and we needed to have the integrity of humanity needed to be brought forward, and he had to be the one that did that. So it's an amazing. And so within the book there's not only understanding your great core quality and honoring that more, and practicing and how to practice that, and how to make choices in our lives. I do what's called the extraordinary power process in there, where we teach people how to make the choice. Because Eckhart Tolle says that the level of consciousness you have right now is creating your future. Most people think, I'll become more conscious in the future and I'll have a better future. It's not true. That's not how it works. You become more conscious of what you're doing right now and who you are right now, and then your future changes and becomes a more conscious future. If you're unconscious now and are willing to just say, well, I'll just be later, I'll do that, you're going to get to later and you'll be just as unconscious, even though you'll be doing this different behavior. So the extraordinary power process teaches people that when you have an aha moment in your life, anything, just an awareness, and when you read the book, almost every part of the book you read, you're going to go, oh my God, oh geez, that's amazing, that's totally me, I did that too. Any one of the things that you have a realization on, you have to then say, oh, well, if that's true, and now I honor that, starting right now in this small way, just to not like leave my job and go out and do something in the world. just in a small way, like just be a little bit more compassionate, call a friend that I didn't call, do something. If I just start today, just being a little bit more of that, where's my life a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And if I don't, if I put that off and say, well, I'll do that later, and go into our procrastination routines where it's like, yeah, fine, no little thing changes my life. It has to be the big thing. What actually happens 5 years, 10 years? How much more tired are you? How much more isolated are you in your life? And so learning how to use that system is essential. And in the book also, I have a thing that I call the secret place, which is also another legacy that I want to leave for therapists. If therapists got people back to their secret place rather than doing inner child work. So there's a difference between inner child work and what I teach is the secret place. The secret place is a place within you that the soul left. Inner child work is going back and reviewing the pain that your child had and hoping that by reliving it now, it'll make it better. But reliving it now just rewounds it in a lot of cases. Going back and finding this quality within you that was totally alive and separate from the traumas of having to grow up in a normal household and in a whatever your culture was, and how you had to forget who you were, remembering who you are, and then realizing that in that place, in what we call the secret place, is actually what you're going to do as an adult. And as I've worked a lot with this, I've realized that the concept of being an adult is the most childish thing we do. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the concept of an adult you developed when you were a child.
Mm-hmm.
And you were completely wrong about what an adult was. You thought that they had it all together and they knew what was going on and they got to work on time and they made the money and they did this and everything you saw in your parents that you saw, well, that's what an adult is and this is what you created this illusion of what an adult is in your mind, and then you set about trying to become an adult, which was completely taking you into a lie. First of all, they weren't like that. They didn't have any idea who they were at all. And they were just winging it and trying to be who they were supposed to be. And of course, most children are born to people in their 20s and 30s when the adults know the least about who they are. And so when we grow up and realize that we've tried to become our parents is when we hit the midlife crisis. And then we realize that the child always knew that whatever you were doing in your secret place, and I'll share one of my secret places. I used to have a rocky knoll that I would go into, and I would sit, and there was like sticks and leaves, and would fall in there, and there was dirt, and there were rocks and things, and I would sit in there, and the sun would be, and it was nice and warm in this little crevice between these rocks, and I would make superheroes. I was like taking sticks and making capes for them, and some would like bury underground, some would fly, and some could go invisible, and some had like this deep like heart that could love anybody, or some were bad, and somewhere, and so and I realized that I love doing that, and then I wanted to be a superhero, and I wanted to be, but then later on in my life I'm realizing everything I do in my school is calling out the superhero in people. I'm still making superheroes. It's what I've always wanted. There's always this superhero quality within a person, this unstoppable, sort of unbendable power that each person has, and it's completely unique. And I love the X-Men movies because they have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these oddball, and they call them mutants. But we are all mutants. We all have this unique quality within us that we're here to express. And what was neat also is that as I'm learning this, and I'm learning from Alexander Lowen and Wilhelm Reich work about the bioenergetics and these 5 sort of, the way people wound, which they talked about. I also learned that there were these 5 core soul qualities within people that give people the rock to build their spiritual purpose on. And without that rock, with what we're taught right now on the in TV and from our parents and certainly from the internet, anybody can do anything, is one of the greatest wounds we take. And we're taught anybody can do anything means that, well, I should be able to do whatever I feel like doing. But it's not true. There's only one thing we're supposed to do, and it's be us. And if we don't investigate what that means and how it feels to be us, and how our feelings are what are driving us, we tend to try to be who we are through our mind, which is just trial and error. And if anybody's 40 or 50 or 60 years old and you've been doing the trial and error life, how much longer can you go?
Right.
And so that's when people come to me and they're like, I need to understand. I've done a lot of things. I've been really successful, or I've not been successful. I've been failure or whatever, but I don't feel like I've gotten to know really who I am at all. I know who I'm not, but I don't know who I am. And so this program and this book is really about helping people discover this great quality within them and bond in an amazing way.
Nice. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Rhys, how do they find you on the internet, or how do they does people find you?
Well, the easy way to get my book is to go to, the book's called Discover Your Purpose, and it's discoveryourpurposebook, all one word, .com. And when you go in there, you'll still buy the book through Amazon, but when you buy it through that web page, you'll also get a bunch of bonuses from me, lectures and things about the profiles and more information than you would if you just go on Amazon and get the book. There's also a member site that you get that has the meditations that you can listen to. So you definitely want to make sure when you get the book, you follow through on all the different fun things that I offer that come with the book. And then the other one is the school, which is Rhys, RHYS. So Rhys is RHYS, ThomasInstitute.com. And you can find out about how, the different events I run, and also, the school, which is when you've done everything else, come see me. And we're a mastery program, at sort of like a mystery school almost level. I love the idea that we're there to not create cookie cutter people, but create superheroes.
Very, very cool. Rhys, it's been very much a pleasure to have you on the show, and I'm sure that you'll be back on at some other point. Really enjoyed speaking with you this morning. And,
thank you, Jeremy.
And enjoy Spain. And
yeah,
many blessings.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.